Okay, Assalamu alaikum students. So let's get started with February March 2025 IGCSE Physics Paper 2 Variant 2 45 minutes के paper. Let's start with that. Okay. So, yep. The diagram shows three forces acting on an object. Okay, so we have three forces acting on an object. You have to calculate the magnitude of the resultant force acting on the object. How will you do that? Can you realize in the vertical direction only one force is acting, that is of 6 Newton? In the vertical direction, you have a 6 Newton force acting upward. What about the horizontal direction, beta? What about the horizontal direction? Can you realize in the horizontal direction, you have a force of 9 Newton towards the right, force of 1 Newton towards the left? What is the force in the horizontal direction? 9 minus 1, that is 8 Newton towards the right. Can you combine both the forces? Yep, like this. The 6 Newton force acting vertically upward, the 8 Newton force acting towards the right. Can you humbly realize this is the head of the vector? This is the tail of the vector. This is the tail of the vector. This is the head of the vector. Currently, both the tails are connected together. Head to tail rule is not being satisfied. बेटा currently क्या हो रहा है? Head, both the tails are connected together. Head to tail rule is not being satisfied. So bring this 6 Newton का vector to the other side. ठीक है? Like this. This is your 6 Newton vector now. Can you now realize the head of the vector? This head tail are connected together. बेटा अब आप रियलाइज कर रहे हो हेड ऑफ 8 न्यूटन वेक्टर इज कनेक्टेड टू द टेल ऑफ द 6 न्यूटन वेक्टर. Head to tail rule is satisfied. Can you make the resultant vector? Yep. Here you have your resultant vector. This is a 90-degree angle. How will you calculate resultant? Resultant, we will calculate it using Pythagoras theorem. Pythagoras hypotenuse square is equals to perpendicular square plus base square. What is your perpendicular? Let's say your perpendicular is 6, base is 8, resultant ka square. Resultant ka square comes out to be 100 Newton. Resultant comes out to be 10 Newton. B is your answer. Perfect. Let's further move ahead. Which row defines speed and velocity actually? Speed or velocity की definition क्या होगी? What is speed? Speed is distance traveled per unit time. And what is velocity? You can say velocity is a speed in a given direction. तो आपका B आपका correct answer हो सकता है. Simple. Let's further move ahead. The graph shows the journey of a motorcyclist. Okay, so this shows the journey of a motorcyclist. Which section of the graph shows the time when the motorcyclist is stationary? Okay, हमने बताना है कि motorcyclist stationary कब है? When is the velocity of motorcyclist zero? This is the speed time graph. बेटा यहाँ पे velocity या speed zero कब हो रही है? In this region, that is region C. In this region, the velocity or speed is getting zero. In this region, the motorcyclist is stationary. Simple as that. Nothing complicated here. Body. आगे बढ़ते हैं. Let's move ahead. Let's move on to question 4. The acceleration of free fall on moon is 1/6 of its value on Earth. So you can say acceleration of free fall on moon is 1/6 of the value on Earth. Perfect. On Earth, the mass of an astronaut is 60 kg. Earth पे आपका mass क्या है बेटा? 60 kg. Which row give the mass and weight of astronaut on the Earth and on the moon? Earth पे mass क्या होगा? 60 kg. मून पे भी मास क्या रहेगा बेटा? 60 kg. मास विल नेवर चेंज. ऑप्शन सी एंड ए विल गेट कैंसिल आउट क्योंकि सी और ए में आप मास चेंज कर रहे हो. ऑलवेज रिमेंबर, whenever you shift from planet to a different planet or from Earth to Moon, your mass will remain same. Let's calculate the weight on Earth. Weight on Earth किस तरह आएगा? Mass into gravitational field strength of Earth. Mass is 60. Gravitational field strength of Earth is 9.8. Can you calculate the weight? That comes out to be 588 Newton. That is rounded off to 590 Newton as your weight on Earth. D is your answer. Simple. Nothing complicated here. कुछ भी हमने complicate नहीं किया. Let's further move ahead. That load extension graph, yeah, the force extension graph for a material is shown. Which point indicates the limit of proportionality? बेटा limit of proportionality क्या होता था? How do we define limit of proportionality? Any ideas, geniuses? हाँ जी, limit of proportionality क्या होता था? It is a point on the force या load versus extension graph where the line stops being linear. Stops being linear. बेटा फोर्स वर्सेस एक्सटेंशन ग्राफ जब आपका लीनियर होना खत्म कर देगा, दैट मीन्स जब फोर्स वर्सेस एक्सटेंशन ग्राफ एक लाइन होना खत्म कर देगा, इट स्टार्ट्स टू कर्व, दैट पॉइंट इज नोन एज लिमिट ऑफ प्रोपोर्शनैलिटी. ए इज योर लिमिट ऑफ प्रोपोर्शनैलिटी. सिंपल. आगे बढ़ते हैं. An object has a mass of 4 kg is moving with a velocity of 3. What is the momentum of the object? Momentum of the object इस तरह निकालेंगे, mass into velocity. मास क्या है 4, वेलोसिटी क्या है बेटा 3. योर मोमेंटम कम्स आउट टू बी 12 kg मीटर पर सेकेंड. सी इज योर आंसर. सिंपल. अब आ जाओ यहाँ पे. अ टॉल सिलेंडर इज फिल्ड विद टू लिक्विड्स. ठीक है, एक टॉल सिलेंडर है जिसको हमने टू लिक्विड से फिल किया हुआ है, विच डू नॉट मिक्स. The two liquids have different densities. Okay, the two liquids have different densities. A student measures the pressure due to liquids at different depths. अच्छा जी, student measure कर रहा है pressure due to liquid at different depths. Now always remember the liquid at the bottom side. The liquid at the bottom is more dense, or you can say it has a higher density. The liquid at the bottom will always have a higher density or will be more dense. However, the liquid at the top will be less dense and will have a lower density. ठीक है, liquid at the top will have a lower density, it will be less dense. Perfect. Which graph shows how the liquid pressure varies between position P and Q? बेटा position से P से जब आप Q की तरफ जा रहे हो, how will your pressure vary? Now realize very carefully. प्रेशर का क्या फॉर्मूला होता था? रो जी एच. Can you realize pressure is plotted on the y-axis? Depth is plotted on the x-axis. इस ग्राफ का प्रेशर वर्सेस डेप्थ के ग्राफ का ग्रेडियंट क्या होगा? The gradient of this graph is density into gravitational field distance. Can you realize the first liquid, that is this one, which I am highlighting in pink, has a lesser density? If your density is less, your gradient of line will be less. You will have a less steep line like this. However, as soon as you move into this more dense liquid, this one which I am highlighting in green, your density is more, your gradient will be more. You will have a much steeper line. That is this. ऐसा ऑप्शन सिर्फ एक ही है, that is B. ए में इट इज रिवर्स. ए में आपके पास एक मोर स्टीप लाइन है, फिर लेस स्टीप लाइन है, विच इज नॉट द करेक्ट आंसर. लेट्स फिर देन मूव अहेड. A tennis ball with a momentum of 2.3 kg meter per second is struck with a tennis racket. The racket causes the direction of the motion of the ball to reverse. Okay. The racket exerts an average force of 1500 Newton during the impact. Okay. The racket and the ball are in contact for a time of this. Okay. This is the time. This is the force. Okay. Can you calculate the change in momentum? Force is equals to change in momentum over change in time. Force की value क्या है? 1500. You have to calculate change in momentum multiplied by the time, that is 0.0024. What will your answer come out to be? Answer क्या आ जाएगी? 1500 into 0.0024. This comes out to be what? Change in momentum comes out to be what? 3.6 kg meter per second is your change in momentum. Now, let's analyze what is happening. You have a tennis ball that has an initial momentum of what? 2.3 kg meter per second. This hits a tennis racket and rebounds with a final momentum of Pf You have to calculate this PF. बच्चे आपने ये फाइनल मोमेंटम PF निकालना है. How will you do that? बेटा लेट्स अज्यूम कि आपके राइट साइड वाले वेक्टर्स आर नेगेटिव, द लेफ्ट साइड वाले वेक्टर्स आर पॉजिटिव. Your change in momentum is equals to what? Final momentum minus initial momentum. बच्चे फाइनल मोमेंटम क्या है? PF acting towards the left side, it will be positive. Initial momentum is 2.3, acting towards the right, it will be negative. Change in momentum is 3.6. Final momentum PF minus 2.3. Why an added minus here? क्योंकि हमने assume किया है all the vectors acting towards the right are taken as negative, 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 positive हो जाएगा. 3.6 is equals to the final momentum plus 2.3. Bring this to the other side. 3.6 minus 2.3 is equals to your final momentum. That comes out to be 1.3 kg meters per second. A is your answer. Simple. Let's further move ahead. A car is traveling at a speed of this. The kinetic energy stored in the car is this. Okay. Can you calculate the mass of the car? Yep. 32,000 is equals to 1 upon 2 into mass into velocity, that is 8 ka square. Can you calculate the mass? Yes. 32,000 multiplied by 2 divided by 8 ka square is equals to your mass. Can you calculate the value of mass, beta? Mass की value निकाल सकते हो? Yes or no? Yep, mass comes out to be 1000 kg. Okay. Now you have to calculate the kinetic energy when the speed is 16. कैसे निकालेंगे बेटा? Kinetic energy is equals to half into m, that is 1000, into v का square, that is 16 square. Okay, divided by 2. This comes out to be 128,000 joules. Rounded off, this gives you a value of 1,30,000 joules. Perfect. The sun is not the primary source of energy for which resource? Tidal. बेटा sun जो है वो primary source of energy नहीं है. For tidal energy, always remember answer comes out to be B. In an experiment is done to compare the rate of conduction of thermal energy in metal and plastic. ठीक है, basically we are seeing के rate of conduction of thermal energy किस तरह होती है in metal and plastic. An ice cube is placed on each spoon and the other end is gently heated. एक ice cube हमने place किया on metal spoon and this end is heated. We have then placed an ice cube on a plastic spoon and then this end is heated. Which row has the correct prediction and the correct explanation? Now, obviously, जो metal spoon है, it will conduct heat quickly because metal is a good conductor. If the metal spoon conduct heats quickly, since metal is a good conductor of heat, it will cause the ice cube to melt more quickly. The ice cube melts more quickly on the metal spoon. Why? Because metal is a good conductor. Simple. Okay. For students determine the efficiency of four different electrical devices. The teachers know that when a student has made a mistake in the calculation, which value of efficiency is not correct. Efficiency can never ever be greater than 100%. D is your answer. D is incorrect. In this answer, your efficiency is greater than 100%, which is not possible. A sample of gas is sealed inside a container of fixed volume. Okay, so your volume is constant. Perfect. The temperature of the gas is increased. Okay, जब भी आपका volume constant होता है, your temperature becomes directly proportional to pressure. As the temperature is increased, your pressure will increase. Which statement explain why the pressure of the gas increases? Anji, why does the pressure of the gas increases? Because the gas particles collide with the walls of container more frequently. A is your answer. Let's further move ahead. A student does an experiment to determine the specific heat capacity. What is the formula of specific heat capacity? Energy Q divided by M into change in temperature. What is energy? 12 kilojoules. 12 into 10 is the power of 3. Mass क्या है बेटा? 600 grams converted into 0.6 kg. What will be your change in temperature? Final minus initial. 45 minus 20. What does your specific heat capacity comes out to be? 800 joules per kg degree centigrade. D is your answer. Perfect. Let's further move ahead to question 15. A metal block is left overnight in a cool, shady room. In the morning, the metal block is moved into warm surroundings. Okay, now you are moving into warm surroundings. Which statement about the metal block is correct in the morning? कौन सा statement about the metal block is correct? बेटा देखो, अगर आप मेटल ब्लॉक को वार्म सराउंडिंग्स में छोड़ दोगे, द टेम्परेचर ऑफ मेटल ब्लॉक विल increase. As the temperature of metal block increases, what will happen? The internal energy of the metal block will increase. A is your answer. A fixed mass of gas is contained within a sealed syringe at a pressure of this. This is your P1. The plunger is moved slowly until the pressure is 80 kilopascal. This is P2. The volume of the final gas is 50 cm cube. This is V2. What is the volume of the gas before the plunger is moved? You have to calculate V1. How will you do that? P1 V1 is equals to P2 V2. What is the value of P1? 100 kilopascals into V1. What is the value of P2? 80 kilopascals into the volume, that is 50. So if I calculate V1, it will be 80 divided by 100 into 50. That comes out to be 40 cm cube as your V1. B is your answer. Let's move on to question 17. The diagram shows the more energetic water molecules escaping from the surface of water. What is this process called? बेटा अगर more energetic molecules surface से escape कर रहे हैं, this process is known as evaporation. Perfect. A hot object emits thermal radiation. Perfect. Which row describe two changes that both reduce the rate of emission of radiation. अगर आप surface area reduce करते हो तो radiation का rate reduce हो जाएगा. If you reduce the surface temperature, then too radiation का rate reduce हो जाएगा. D is your answer. The frequency of wave is doubled. The speed does not change. What happens to the wavelength? Do we remember this formula? V is equals to F lambda. Frequency को नीचे ले आओ बेटा. Now your velocity is constant. What does that mean? That means frequency is inversely proportional to wavelength. If your frequency has doubled, what will happen? Your wavelength will half because they are inversely proportional. अगर आप frequency को double करते हो, wavelength क्या हो जाएगी? Half हो जाएगी. D is your answer. Which statement about ultrasound is correct? Ultrasound कौन सी sound waves होती है? With a frequency greater than 20,000 hertz. And they are longitudinal waves. If you have a frequency greater than 20,000 hertz, the frequency is above the audible sound and it is a longitudinal wave. A is your answer. Perfect. 21 पे आ जाओ. Which statement about a plane mirror is not correct? कौन सा statement about a plane mirror is not correct? The plane mirror forms a real image. Yep. This statement is not correct. Plane mirror हमेशा virtual images form करता है हमेशा. A ray of light is incident between air and water. ठीक है, एक ray of light incident है between air and water. Under which condition is the ray of light totally internally reflected? किन conditions के अंदर the ray of light is totally internally reflected? Always remember, for total internal reflection, there are two conditions. Your light ray must move from a more dense material into a less dense material. ठीक है, टोटल इंटरनल रिफ्लेक्शन के लिए पहली कंडीशन क्या होती है बेटा? लाइट रे को मोर डेंस से लेस डेंस मटेरियल में जाना चाहिए और एंगल ऑफ इंसिडेंस ग्रेटर होना चाहिए क्रिटिकल एंगल से. The ray initially in water is incident on water air boundary. Yeah, that's correct. You are going from a more dense to a less dense material and hits at an angle of incident greater than the critical angle. T is your answer. ऑप्शन ए और बी बिल्कुल नहीं हो सकते बिकॉज इन ऑप्शन ए एंड बी यू आर गोइंग फ्रॉम अ लेस डेंस मटेरियल टू अ मोर डेंस मटेरियल. इन these types of scenarios total internal reflection does not happen. Okay. A converging lens is used to make an image on the screen. Whenever there is an image on the screen, that's a real image. तो C और D तो cancel out हो जाएंगे. Also, always remember real images are inverted. A is your answer. Perfect. Let's further move ahead. A negatively charged rod is brought near to a metal sphere. A positive charge develops on the surface of the metal sphere closest to the negative charge rod. अच्छा जी, देखो you have this negatively charged rod इस तरह से. When you bring this closer to a sphere, क्या होता है? जो स्फेयर के इलेक्ट्रॉन्स होते हैं वो रिपेल करके राइट साइड पे आ जाते हैं. The positive charges are left here. Always remember, always remember, you can write this as a key point as well. Positive charges never move. Beta, positive charges never move. If you are bringing a negatively charged rod here, the electrons will get repelled. Positive charge will never ever move. C and D will get cancelled out. Electrons in the sphere are repelled. B is your answer. Why electrons are repelled? Because आपकी rod भी negatively charged है. Sphere में जो electrons होंगे, they will also be negatively charged. Both are like charges. They get repelled away. Let's see question number 25. The electromotive force of a cell is defined in terms of which quantities? Electromotive force क्या होती है? Energy transferred per unit charge in moving the charge around the circuit is your answer. A resistor of resistance R is connected to a battery of electromotive force V. The current in the resistor is I. The power dissipated is P. In a time of T, the energy is E. Can you state the correct expression? Energy is equal to current into voltage into time. A is the correct answer. Simple. Nothing complicated here. The length of a copper wire is 80 centimeter and cross-sectional area is this. Has a resistance of R. Which length of copper wire has a cross-sectional area of 0.4 millimeter and has a resistance of R? अच्छा जी, चलो देखते हैं बेटा. एक कॉपर वायर है जिसकी लेंथ है 80 सेंटीमीटर, क्रॉस सेक्शनल एरिया इज 0.2 millimeter square. The resistance is R. Now, if your area doubles, area आ गया आपका 0.4 millimeter square, what will happen? Do you remember this formula? Resistance is inversely proportional to area. अगर आपने एरिया को डबल कर दिया है बेटे तो आपकी रेजिस्टेंस क्या हो जानी चाहिए? हाफ. सो आर विल बिकम व्हाट? हाफ आर. आर क्या हो जाएगा बेटा? हाफ आर. बट आप क्या चाहते हो? व्हाट डू यू वांट? यू वांट योर रेजिस्टेंस टू रिमेन आर. You want your resistance to remain R. What will you do? What you can do is you can double your length. Length comes out to be what? 160 centimeter. R को भी डबल कर देंगे. Why? Because R is directly proportional to length. If you double your length, your R doubles gets multiplied by 2. You have a resistance of R again. D is your answer. 160 centimeters should be the length of your copper wire. आगे बढ़ते हैं. Four identical resistors are connected to a battery as shown. Each resistor has a value of 120 ohm. Resistance R4 is removed. Which effect does removing the resistor have on the effective resistance of the circuit? ये resistor आप remove कर दो. Now for this I want you guys to analyze one thing. Let's say this is a battery. This is one resistor connected in series to the battery. The resistance is, let's say, 120 ohms. The total resistance of the circuit is 120 ohms. Beta, currently there is only one resistor in the circuit. The resistance of the whole circuit is equal to the resistance of the resistor, that is 120 ohm. Easy peasy, nothing complicated. Now let's suppose I attach two resistors in parallel. This is also 120 ohm. This is also 120 ohm. Now your brain will say that sir हम resistor attach कर रहे हैं, resistance increase होनी चाहिए, है ना? बेटा आपका छोटा सा नन्ना सा मुन्ना सा ब्रेन ये कहेगा कि आप सर एक और रेजिस्टर अटैच कर रहे हैं, टोटल रेजिस्टेंस शुड इंक्रीज, बट दैट विल नॉट हैपन. दिस इज व्हाट आई वांट टू टीच यू गाइस टुडे. अगर आप एक और 120 ओम का रेजिस्टर पैरेलल में लगा देते हो, व्हाट विल योर टोटल रेजिस्टेंस बिकम? 1 ओवर आरटी. 1 ओवर 120 प्लस 1 ओवर 120 आरटी is equals to what? 1 over RT, sorry, is equals to 2 over 120 multiplied. 120 divided by 2 is equals to RT is equals to 60 ohms. Wow, interesting. Here you can write a key point. Whenever a resistor is added in parallel, the total resistance decreases. बेटा जब भी आप parallel में resistor add करते हो, your total resistance decreases. You can write a key point here. Whenever a resistor is added in parallel, the total resistance decreases. Always remember that. And whenever, this is the reverse point of this, whenever a resistor is removed from a parallel combination, from a parallel combination, total resistance will increase. Now here, can you humbly realize we are removing a resistor from the parallel combination? Your resistance should increase. There is only one such option. C is your answer. Further move ahead. Three resistors in the circuit are shown are identical. Okay, so that means iski bhi resistance aa raha hai, iski bhi resistance aa raha hai, iski bhi resistance aa raha hai. Okay, perfect. The reading on ammeter 2 is 0.25 ampere. ठीक है, 0.5 ampere. ठीक. Reading on ammeter 3 is 0.25 ampere. ठीक हो गया. And the reading on voltmeter 2 is 1.5 volts. ठीक है. बेटा एम मीटर 2 पे आपकी रीडिंग क्या है 0.5, एम मीटर 3 पे आपकी रीडिंग क्या है 0.25, वोल्टेज की रीडिंग क्या है 1.5. परफेक्ट. व्हाट आर द रीडिंग्स ऑन एम मीटर 1 एंड वोल्ट मीटर 1? अच्छा जी, एम मीटर 1 पे बेटा क्या रीडिंग होगी? इट विल बी द समेशन ऑफ द रीडिंग ऑन एम मीटर 2 एंड एम मीटर 3. एम मीटर 1 पे बच्चे आपकी क्या रीडिंग होगी? द सम ऑफ द रीडिंग ऑन एम मीटर 2 एंड 3. Add them up. 0.5 plus 0.25, 0.75 ampere is your reading on ammeter 1. Can you realize 0.75 वाले सिर्फ दो ही ऑप्शन ए और बी कैंसिल आउट. रजिस्टर आर के थ्रू आपका वोल्टेज क्या है 1.5. इस रजिस्टर आर के थ्रू भी आपका वोल्टेज क्या आएगा 1.5 volts. This is 1.5, this is 1.5. The total voltage across the branch will be 3 volts. If this is 3 volts, the cell is in parallel. सेल भी कितने वोल्ट्स का हो जाएगा 3 volts. वोल्ट मीटर V1 की रीडिंग क्या आ जाएगी 3 volts. D is your answer. Let's further move ahead. A wire is moved in a region between the poles of a magnet. A current is induced. Whenever a current is induced, कौन सा लॉ लगाते हैं भाई? Fleming's right hand rule. Whenever a current is induced, कौन सा लॉ लगाते हैं बेटा? Fleming's right hand rule. In which direction is the wire moved? कौन सी डायरेक्शन में वायर को मूव करते हैं? First of all, your magnetic field is going from north to south. This is your magnetic field. Your current is going downward. So your second finger should point downward like this. Where will your thumb point? बेटा thumb कहाँ point करेगा? Your thumb points inward or into the page like this. Any answers? Perpendicularly into the plane. C is your answer. चलो जी आगे बढ़ते हैं. A fixed resistor is connected to a secondary coil of a step down transformer. ठीक है भाई, step down transformer में एक बात जरूर याद रखना या दो बातें जरूर याद रखना. Step down transformer में there are two major key points. The current in the secondary coil is much greater than the current in the primary coil. यहाँ पे जो secondary coil में current होगा that will be greater than the current in the primary coil. Second key point that you need to remember is that the voltage in the primary coil for a step down transformer is greater than the voltage in the secondary coil. ये VP greater होगा compared to VS. Perfect. The variable resistor is adjusted so that the current in the fixed resistor decreases by 0.5 ampere. So basically आप क्या decrease कर रहे हो? Secondary coil का current. Perfect. What is the change to the current in the primary circuit? प्राइमरी सर्किट में करंट को क्या चेंज होगा। अगर आप सेकेंडरी कॉइल का करंट डिक्रीज कर रहे हो, प्राइमरी कॉइल का करंट भी क्या करेगा, डिक्रीज, बट विथ अ लेसर वैल्यू देन 0.5 एम्पियर। व्हाई? बिकॉज primary coil का current is already less than the secondary coil का current. If you decrease the secondary coil का current by 0.25 ampere, primary का उससे भी less से decrease होगा। B is your answer. An electrical device changes the voltage of an electrical supply from 240 volts to 20 volts AC. बेटा जब भी आपने AC वोल्टेज को वन वैल्यू से सेकंड वैल्यू में कन्वर्ट करना होता है, यू यूज व्हाट, यू यूज अ ट्रांसफार्मर। सी इज योर आंसर। An AC generator is set up so that its coil of wire is perpendicular to the magnetic field. The coil of wire is rotated slowly to produce an alternating EMF. A graph of induced EMF against time is plotted as the coil rotates. Which section of the graph represents a rotation of 3/4 of a turn? बेटा देखो, अगर आपका कॉइल एक पूरी रोटेशन परफॉर्म करेगा, दिस विल बी द ईएमएफ वर्सेस टाइम का ग्राफ। This is the EMF versus time का graph if your coil performs complete rotation. However, अगर आप 3/4 परफॉर्म करते हो रोटेशन के, तो आप वेव भी 3/4 ही कवर करोगे। You will cover your wave from O to R. C is your answer. A uranium nucleus that is 23892 decays to form thorium by alpha particle. अच्छा जी, अल्फा पार्टिकल इमिट करोगे तो क्या होगा, मास नंबर डिक्रीज कर जाएगा बाय 4, प्रोटॉन नंबर डिक्रीज कर जाएगा बाय 2। दिस इज योर थोरियम एटम। थोरियम डिकेज टू फॉर्म अ प्रोटैक्टियम बाय इमिटिंग अ बीटा पार्टिकल। अच्छा जी, फिर आप बीटा पार्टिकल इमिट करोगे तो योर मास नंबर रिमेन सेम, प्रोटॉन नंबर इंक्रीजेस बाय 1। दिस इज योर प्रोटैक्टियम। तो मास नंबर क्या होगा, 235। दिस कैंसिल, दिस कैंसिल। एटॉमिक नंबर क्या हो जाएगा, 91। सी इज योर आंसर। Let's move on to 35. Which row shows what happens by emitting a beta particle? बेटा beta particle emit करने से क्या होता है? Your neutron changes to a proton and an electron is emitted. A is your answer. Which precaution does not always reduces a scientist's exposure when working with ionizing radiations? बेटा कौन सा precaution does not reduce scientist's exposure? Ensuring that the scientists only work with radiation of long half-life? No. इससे कौन सा आपका प्रिकॉशन चल रहा है भाई? दिस इज नॉट अ प्रिकॉशन। A detector is placed near a radioactive isotope and reads a count rate of 700 counts per minute. The half-life is this. The background radiation is this. What is the count rate after 16 minutes? First of all, calculate the corrected count rate. Corrected count rate किस तरह निकालोगे? By taking the original count rate, subtracting the background radiation. This comes out to be 640. Now after 8 minutes क्या हो जाएगा, ये काउंट रेट हाफ हो जाएगा। आफ्टर फर्दर 8 मिनट्स काउंट रेट क्या हो जाएगा, 160। बट नाउ you have to add the background radiation as well. 160 plus 60, that is 220 counts per minute. These are answers. Let's move on to question 38. The nucleus of an isotope of nitrogen absorbs a neutron. It then decays into an isotope of carbon and emits X. What is X? ठीक है, X हमने निकालना है. How will we do that? First of all, the sum of mass numbers on the left hand side, 1 plus 14, is equals to the sum of mass numbers on the right hand side, 14 plus, let's say this is A, 14 plus A. A की वैल्यू क्या आ जाएगी, 1. Perfect. Now, let's say the sum of proton numbers on the left hand side, 0 plus 7, is equals to the sum of proton numbers on the right side, 6 plus B. What will be your answer of B? B comes out to be 1 as well. तो बेटा X की configuration क्या आ जाएगी, 1 1. Can you realize X has one proton only? ये क्या है, X has one proton only, and that is coming in the mass number as well. So X represents a proton. D is your answer. Let's see this. The graph shows the strength of Earth's gravitational field vary as the distance from the Earth increases. The graph क्या show कर रहा है, strength of Earth's gravitational field decrease कर रही है as the distance from the Earth is increasing. What will happen to the mass and weight? बेटा mass तो आपका unchanged रहेगा, no matter what happens. Weight decrease कर जाएगा. Why? because weight is equals to mg. अगर g की वैल्यू या ग्रेविटेशनल फील्ड स्ट्रेंथ की वैल्यू कम हो रही है, वेट कम हो जाएगा. सी इज योर आंसर. अच्छा जी, now a student plots the speed of different galaxies moving away from earth against their distances from the earth. ठीक है, स्पीड वर्सेस डिस्टेंस का ग्राफ गिवन है. व्हाट इज योर हबल स्पेस कांस्टेंट? बेटा क्या आपको ये फॉर्मूला याद है? The speed is equals to Hubble space constant into the distance d. If you are plotting a speed on the y-axis, distance on the x-axis, the gradient will be equal to Hubble space constant. For gradient, let's take 2 point. This is your first point, 0, comma 0. Second point क्या हो जाएगा बेटा ये? That is 1 into 2 0 0 0 0 0. ठीक है. Can you calculate the gradient? Yep. Gradient क्या आ जाएगा? y2, that is 2 0. Like 2 and 7 zeros है. ठीक है, 2 and 7 zeros हैं, तो मैं एक काम करता हूँ. 2 into 10 raised to the power of 7 minus 0 divided by 1 into 10 raised to the power of 25 that I have picked up from this axis. Your answer comes out to be 2 into 10 raised to the power of minus 18 is your Hubble space constant. A is your answer. This marks the end of your paper. If you have any questions, you can ask.